guys, what is going on? Redmaster here, and welcome back to the episode of Cards and Castles, where today we will be taking a look into the neutral faction of Cards and Castles. I finished up the Druid review, of course, some time ago, but I feel like neutrals on their own are sort of like a faction, even though, you can't presently play, it's just a mono neutral or have a neutral as your faction color. But I think it's still, important to go over some of the cards that have been changed with the Enchanted Grove, because there are a variety of different neutral cards that have become either stronger or are pretty noteworthy to look at. So, with that being said, let's just get straight into the cards, I would say, right? So for those of you who may be new to the game, neutrals are sort of this faction that you see right here, illustrated by a simple shovel and pitchfork, and they represent cards that don't really have a faction to be a part of, so they're kind of grouped together here as a card that you can throw in any deck without having to pick, Viking, Crusade. They're always like this sort of, this set amount of cards that you can use for pretty much any color. And of course, with that being said, they also don't really have a specific purpose. A big thing about the neutrals is they carry a wide variety of either some archetype support, some wacky abilities, or some, just basic units. Usually the neutral faction does have a lot of, I would say, basic units, because if you're just getting into the game, and you don't know what to experiment with in terms of colors, you'll always have this wide variety of starting options to choose from. So of course that's always good to see there. In terms of strength, though, I would say no deck goes without running a neutral, I would say. There are, I think, some decks that at least attempt to, but I think every deck runs at least one neutral, which goes to illustrate that some of these cards in here are extremely powerful, especially in higher competition play. I know some of these basic cards you see in top tier levels of play. That's how, how much diversity each card has. In terms of strength and weaknesses, you really can't decipher one, because sort of a strength and weakness goes for each individual card, not a faction as a whole. So it's when you're talking about overall strengths and weaknesses, it's more, like I said, down in terms of the card. So with that being said, because there isn't a lot to talk about in terms of the the neutral faction as a whole, let's go ahead and look at some of the stronger cards made, I guess, how would we say, more prominent since the Enchanted Grove's release. And the first card we'll be taking a look at is the Lumberjack. Now, of course, the Lumberjack, no matter what deck you're running, I would say Lumberjack's pretty much in every deck, and that shows how powerful he is. And he's such a simple card, too, that it's kind of hard not to include him. For 1 gold, you get a 1/1 unit whose last will is to draw a card. Pretty simple and pretty useful to limit sort of your deck size in a sense. It's sort of a just powerful cycling tool in general. You want to throw out the Lumberjack early game to get a quick kill, maybe even some chip damage on the castle if you're really looking for that. But essentially, if you're throwing in the Lumberjack, you just kind of want that draw. And usually in a game like this, where draw is only subjugated to a few colors, mainly Crusaders, I think I guess the overall usage of him is pretty clear to see. It's just essentially draw if you're not running Crusaders. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward card, pretty simple card. And of course, I don't need to pretty much further explain why. I mean, obviously neutral, the diversity can go into any faction, or any deck, excuse me, obviously. And of course, the last ability, draw, being extremely useful, seeing as how really draw only exists in a few factions, not every single one. So with that said, Lumberjack, a very, very powerful card since I mean, I wouldn't say powerful, but incredibly useful card, let's put it at that, since the Enchanted Grove's release. And overall, a card that I think was, well made, in my opinion, for its purpose. And the next card we'll be taking a look at is, of course, the Unholy Altar. Now, it's only been about 1 or 2 months since people have really started to click with the Unholy Altar. But let me tell you, in that time span, the Unholy Altar has shown itself to be it's a pain in the ass. It is a pain in the ass. So, essentially, what we're going to do here for Unholy Altar, for 2 gold, excuse me, you're going to drop a drop it as a building. So, of course, that can be placed behind the castle, behind a unit, etc. And what it does is essentially, of course, summon a zombie at the start of your turn. Now, that may not seem too bad for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the zombie. But for those who are, of course, zombie now being a 2/2 means that you're spawning about a free 2/2 token every turn, and that's pretty powerful. Especially if left alone for a while, if you don't have any sort of mass removal to take care of those zombies, you're going to be risking your own units just to get rid of some 2/2 zombies that the opponent really doesn't care about unless they are, used for maybe a Rakanoth play, or are supposed to be kept alive to be buffed later on by Necromancer or Armory, but that becomes a different story entirely. The Unholy Altar has been seen in pretty much every deck, sort of like the Lumberjack, but maybe not in every deck like Lumberjack. But I think it's fair to say it's been pretty popular. And of course, the zombies are incredibly hard to deal with at 2/2. So, again, just causes for a bit of a pain in the ass for people who play, and usually becomes an instant target as soon as it hits the field, either to a burn spell or a quick rush to sort of remove it. Like companions, maybe if you're running druids, they could take that. I mean, the centaur is a interesting building removal option, but usually that's why people play warlocks a lot, just to get that burn to destroy things like Unholy Altar because of how powerful it is. I would preferably, out of all the cards, I think currently needing to be changed, I think Unholy Altar might need a tweak, but that's a story for a separate time. Without going too much into sort of improvement discussions and whatnot. So, Unholy Altar, a card that's been greatly benefited by the recent changes to Zombie, and of course, for that Zombie change from TEG. So overall, Unholy Altar, a pretty crazy card in my opinion. Now, our next card is going to be another building, and that building is actually going to be the Armory. Now, when I first did videos highlighting the Enchanted Grove and its beta stages, I mentioned that its stat points are going to become more and more important progressing forward in the game, and that's been somewhat highlighted recently with people including Armory and sort of stat boosted like this. The way the numbers now on units are so close together from the recent changes really let cards like Blacksmith and Armory stand out above some of their other I don't know what. I guess they stand out is what I'm trying to say. Maybe against other sort of buff cards. Seeing as how Armory is a permanent buff, and so is Blacksmith of gaining one attack and one health. I would say, I mean, with decks like I mean, depending on if you're using rats maybe or undead. Armory, of course, a great option to go to, but people have been running Armory, of course, separate from sort of these traditional swarm decks, which has really illustrated how powerful it is, giving those units an extra +1/+1 above the rest, and making them harder to deal with since, the stat lines are so close now. A 1/1 difference is really, it really does make a difference for how, how you handle the board. So I think overall Armory hugely benefited from the I'm saying that a lot. I'm trying to find the words here. The stat line regulating, if that's the right word. That took me a while to find the word, but such is the memory of mine. So with that being said, before I confuse your English language even more, Armory, great card. Stat line regulation made this card even better, and one that I don't think is going to see less play anytime soon. The next card we'll be looking into is the Grendel. Now, Grendel's been sort of an interesting card recently. Of course, it used to be, I think, a slower moving unit, and its last will essentially was summon a zombie. I kind of am blanking on the stat lines, but I think the Enchanted Grove made this card a lot more popular. For 5 gold, you summon a 6/7 unit, so that technically is above what you would normally see in a 5 gold unit. But its last will, of course, giving a random enemy unit +2/+2. It's sort of an interesting card now, I think, and I've kind of already highlighted that I kind of dislike Grendel, or I dislike running Grendel for the fact that I don't like to give my opponent pretty much anything from draw to stats. So that's why I don't run Grendel, but I think what people run Grendel for, is the fact that for 5 gold, you're getting a unit that's scarier and stronger than what you would normally find at the 5 gold range. To put that into perspective, Grendel's a 6/7. Necromancer is, of course, 5 gold. Pegacorn's at 5 gold. They're only at 5/5. Rally the Town, summon 3 Filthy Peasants. Sentry Golem, of course, that's an Awaken, so that's sort of iffy, but its base is 0/5. Tunnel Escape, 3 Miners, 6/6. Wraith, 2/8. You kind of see that Out of all the 5 gold units, in terms of stats, Grendel is kind of the more superior unit here. So I think that's why people like to run it. Of course, Sentry Golem is really the only um, somewhat contender to that, but Sentry Golem needs time to awaken, unless you're carrying a Red of Awakening. But then again, that would be a 6-turn summon combo rather than just a 5 summon and then leave him out on the board without anything to gain that 4/3. But I think in terms of overall power, Grendel is definitely the go-to if you want something that's stronger and meatier, which is why people like him. And of course, he is a rare, while a lot of the other sort of 5. I mean, you got a couple of 5 gold rares here: Wraith, Tunnel Escape. But sort of the contenders to his 5 gold slot: Pegacorn, Necromancer, Sentry Golem. They're all epic, while Grendel is just a rare. So I think that's probably why people want to run him, and that's why he's a bit more popular. It's because he has that sort of easy accessibility due to his rare. I mean, not everyone maybe has Grendel at 3, but I think that's just another reason why Grendel's so popular. Easy accessibility, stronger than normal stat line, and of course that downside of giving the enemy 2/2. But there's an easy way to mitigate that, of course. Have no other units on the board for your opponent to give that buff to. So I think the fact, yeah, so that's another sort of add-on to his list. So one more time, that list: stronger stat line than the rest, easy accessibility due to his rarity, and the fact that his last will could be easily mitigated if done correctly. So with that all in mind, Grendel, of course, an extremely more popular. I keep saying extremely a lot, even though it doesn't really make sense. A more popular cards with TEG's release, and one that I don't think will be decreasing in play again anytime soon. Sort of like Armory. Just because of his meaty style line. Look at that big bicep. I think everyone wants to use that big, muscly Grendel bicep. And for the final card we'll be taking a look at today, we'll be taking a look at Tyrannosaur. Now, Tyrannosaur, of course, a pretty much reliable unit all the way through as of lately. His 6 gold, 6/7 stat line is not to be messed with, along with his fear aura of course, nearby units running away and terror. Every time, if the unit is in a 3x3 space around Tyrannosaur, he sort of flings them away in some sort of direction. The directions are sort of, they're not that hard to decipher at the moment. And like if it's in front of Tyrannosaur, it'll be pushed to the opposite side. If it's behind them, etc., etc. But enough about the fear aura. I feel like Tyrannosaur has pretty much been on top, or where he is now, due to the fact that, of course, we're sort of like how Grendel was sort of strong. It's unusual 6/7 stat line is pretty powerful for the 6 gold slot. If we take a look at these 6 golds, of course, there's a few of, there's not much 6 gold neutral units. Of course, we got the Windfall Griffin at 5/7. We got Dino Nest, but I mean, no one really runs Dino Nest anymore. No one really kind of runs Dino, period. Then you have the Minotaur, which, of course, same stat line as T-Rex, but he's got no ability. So I think with Tyrannosaur having, less competition in this valuable gold slot, it's why people choose to run him. But I wouldn't say he's just completely there off of the fact that all of the other options are bad. He himself is a very sort of reliable option. You're not going wrong with Tyrannosaur, whatever you do. I mean, the fact that it is Dinosaur, yes, that's a fact. I mean, no one's really going to be playing Tyrannosaur for the fact that he's a dino. People run him for his fear aura primarily. Of course, like I mentioned, the whole 3x3 around T-Rex, they get pushed back. Great for setting up things like maybe Inferno, things like Detonate, things that require a unit to get close to the castle without them actually moving forward and making them vulnerable to an attack. Whatever, if a unit needs to get to the castle, I think T-Rex's fear aura is definitely a way to go, and it's why people choose to run him. And I know there's a lot more on why Tyrannosaur is powerful, but I'm actually going to use that sort of opportunity to go and have you guys check out a post about it. I'll link it in the description below, written by Monger. He kind of illustrates why Tyrannosaur is a more powerful card, and why he thinks it's possibly the best card currently in the game. I'll let you guys read that one for yourself to give you more of a perspective on why T-Rex is so powerful, but I pretty much agree with his statements on why that is. I know he doesn't really mention, we may have different ways of mentioning why we think T-Rex is the best, but we're pretty much on agreement as to why he's so powerful. So I want to use this sort of open slot here I mentioned why I think Tyrannosaur is powerful, but I want you guys to check out that post about it and see for yourself. And check out some of the other posts he's got on there too, regarding some other interesting CNC related topics. So yeah, I think that's Tyrannosaur is good. Like that card, possibly best card in the game. Yeah. That being said, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I know this might have been a little short, it might have been a little messy, but the truth be told, I am sort of I'm slow on the uploads recently. If you guys seen the channel activity, it has been slow recently. Obviously, that might be the case for the next 2 weeks. I got to put some priorities in front of the channel, so of course, uploads, may be slow far apart for the next 2 weeks or so. Just want to put that as a disclaimer out there now in case you guys might be worrying about sort of new content, new streams, etc. I'm just putting that out there. Going to be slow for the next 2 weeks, not until hopefully mid-May we should be back rolling to what we were at before. But if you guys like this video, regardless, please give it a like, share with your friends, and of course comment down below your thoughts on the neutral faction. If you guys think it's gotten better, if you guys think things need to be changed in it, do tell me in the comment section below. And if you are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, help show your support to the channel, help us grow, all by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. With that being said, guys, until next time, stay gaming.